Good evening, and welcome to Frank Almo's Visual Audio Readout. I'm Saloma Dedra, your host and guide to the vast treasures of knowledge read for your enjoyment. Each week, celebrities and those verbose in the higher realms read to you live, unedited, from the rarest books in the world, courtesy of Frank Almo's prized personal library. So please, sit back, enjoy, and may wonder and truth fill your heart.
Toad, with the waxen dish being added thereto, and the dried carcass of the toad being reduced into powder, I formed the whole into troches with gum dragon, which being borne about the left breast, drove speedily away all contagion, and being fast bound to the place affected, thoroughly drew out the poison, and these troches were more potent after they had returned into use divers times than when new. I found them to be a most powerful amulet against the plague. For if the serpent eateth dust all the days of its life, because he was the instrument of sinning, so the toad eats earth, which he vomits up, all the days of his life. And according to the adeptical philosophy, the toad bears a hatred to man, so that he infects some herbs that are useful to man with his poison in order for his death. But this difference note between the toad and the serpent. The toad, at the sight of man, from a natural quality sealed in him, called antipathy, conceives a great terror or astonishment, which terror from man imprints on this animal a natural efficacy against the images of the affrighted Arceus in man. For truly, the terror of the toad kills and annihilates the ideas of the affrighted Arceus in man, because the terror in the toad is natural, therefore radical. For the poison, the plague is subdued by the poison of the toad, not by an action primarily destructive, but by a secondary action, as the pestilent idea of hatred or terror extinguishes the serpent. By whole mediation the poison of the plague subsists, and proceeds to infect. For seeing the poison of the plague is the product of the image of the terrified Arceus established in fermental, putrefied odor and mumial air. This coupling ferments the appropriate mean, and immediately the subject of the poison is taken away. Therefore, the opposition of the amulet formed from the body and company of the toad takes away and prevents the baneful and most horrible effects of the pestilential poison and ferment of the plague. Hence it is conjectured that he is an animal ordained by God, that the idea of his terror, being poisonous indeed to himself, should be to us and to our plague a poison in terror. Since therefore the toad is most fearful at the beholding of man, which in himself notwithstanding forms the terror conceived from man, and also the hatred against man, into an image, an active, real being, and not consisting only in a confused apprehension, hence it happens that a poison ariseth in the toad, which kills the pestilent poison of terror in man, to wit, from whence the Arceus waxeth strong, he not only perceiving the pestilent idea to be extinguished in himself, but moreover, because he knoweth that something inferior to himself is terrified, dismayed, and doth fly. Again, so great is the fear of the toad, that if he is placed directly before thee, and thou dost behold with an attentive furious look, so that he cannot avoid thee for a quarter of an hour, he dies, being fascinated with terror and astonishment. I have tried this experiment upon the toad and other reptiles of this nature, and was satisfied of the truth of this affirmation. Hippocrates, by the use of some parts of this animal, attained to himself divine honors For therewith he cured pestilence and contagion, consumptions, and very many other diseases. For he cleansed the flesh of a viper, the utmost part of the tail and head being cut off. He stripped off the skin, casting away the bowels and the gall. He reserved of the intestines only the heart and liver. He drew out all the blood, with the vein running down the backbone. He bruised the flesh and the aforesaid bowels with the bones, and dried them in a warm oven until they could be powdered, which powder he sprinkled upon honey, being clarified and boiled, until he knew that the fleshes in boiling had cast aside their virtue, as well in the broth as in the vapors. He then added unto this electuary the spices of his country to cloak the secret. But this cure of diseases by the serpent contains a great mystery, visibly that as death crept in by the serpent of old, itself ought to be mitigated by the death of the serpent. For Adam, being skillful in the properties of all beasts, was not ignorant also that the serpent was more crafty than other living creatures, and that the aforesaid balsam, the remedy of death, lay hid in the serpent. Wherefore the spirit of darkness could not more safely deceive our first parents than under the guileful serpent's form. For they foolishly imagined they should escape the death, for sorely threatened by God, by the serpent's aid. Amber is an amulet. A piece of red amber worn about one is a preservative against poisons and pestilence. Likewise, a sapphire stone is as effectual. Oil of amber, or amber dissolved in pure spirits of wine, comforts the womb being disordered. If a sole fumigation of it to be made with the warts of the shank of a horse, it will cure many disorders of that region. The liver and gall of an eel, likewise, being gradually dried and reduced to powder, and taken in the quantity of a filbert nut in a glass of warm wine, causes a speedy and safe delivery to women in labor. The liver of a serpent likewise effects the same. Rhubarb, on account of its violent antipathy to choler, wonderfully purges the same. Music is a well-known specific for curing the bite of a tarantula or any venomous spider. Likewise, water cures the hydrophobia. Warts are cured by paring off the same, or by burying as many pebbles secretly as the party has warts. The king's evil may be cured by the heart of a toad worn about the neck, first being dried. Hippomenes excites lust by the bare touch, or being suspended on the party. If anyone shall spit in the hand with which he struck or hurt another, so shall the wound be cured. Likewise, if anyone shall draw the halter wherewith a malefactor was slain across the throat of one who has the quinsy, it certainly cures him in 3 days.